السنة مثل سفينة نوح، من ركبها نجا ومن تركها غرق.
الحمد لله الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله، وكفى بالله شهيدا، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, as to what proceeds, after praising Allah the Most High, separated from His creation in a manner which befits His Majesty, with love and veneration exclusively for Him, and then requesting He the Most High to send His Salat and Salam upon our final Prophet and Messenger, Khatamul Anbiya wal Mursaleen, Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Qurashi alayhi salatu wassalam. We meet once again for our weekly meeting to study the Tarjuma or the Seerah of al-Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, the Legacy of Imam al-Bukhari, authored by the great scholar of the subcontinent, al-ʿAllāmah al-Muhaddith al-Faqih, Shaykh al-Salām Mubārakpūrī rahimahullah ta'ala. And today we shall be discussing مكانة الإمام البخاري ومحبته في قلوب المسلمين, which is Imam al-Bukhari's status and love in the people's hearts. Shaykh al-Salām Mubārakpūrī rahimahullah decided to talk about Imam al-Bukhari's status and love in the people's hearts. The Shaykh al-Salām Mubārakpūrī rahimahullah said, every time Imam al-Bukhari stopped in a city or settled in a land, the Muslims would throng around him in such a way that cannot be properly described. When the people would hear of the extraordinary characteristics which Allah had blessed this eminent Imam with, such as his unparalleled comprehension, unbelievable memory, and vast knowledge, they would long to see him. Thus, when he took up residence in a place, they would gather around him such that there would not be any space left. Intaha kalamu rahimahullah. From the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the people of knowledge, Ahlul Ilm and the ulama, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants them a status among the people. And also that we find that the general public or the common people, they have love for the people of knowledge in their hearts. And this was something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted Imam al-Bukhari with. So this is a blessing that Allah blesses to whom He loves and wishes. We can find many examples such as these in the history of Islam throughout the different ages. A scholar is loved for his knowledge and piety. But today, sadly, a person is admired for his popularity, likes, followers, regardless of what he says or speaks, regardless of whether he has knowledge or not. Somebody once told me that a celebrity speaker, she was sleeping on the plane, and those who accompanied him on this journey, they took a picture of him with his baseball cap and they posted it on the internet, and he got thousands of views. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So this is the sad case of our times today. On the contrary, you see clips of scholars not even getting a few hundred views. So times have changed due to the social media impact. In conclusion, we can say in the past, a person was loved for his knowledge and piety. And today, a person may be admired due to the nonsense that he may talk about. So we can see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed Imam al-Bukhari with extraordinary characteristics. So there were many people who had been blessed with many things, but Imam al-Bukhari was blessed with such things which could not be found among other people, such as his unbelievable memory and vast knowledge, unparalleled comprehension. Then the Shaykh rahimahullah, he said, when he returned to Bukhara from his journeys in seeking knowledge, tents were set out for him a farsakh from the city. And the majority of the city's inhabitants left to receive him, such that no one worthy of mention was left in the city itself. And dirhams and dinars were thrown at him. So as we know that Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala, he left his homeland to go and seek knowledge. This is the true student of knowledge, or this is the formal way of seeking knowledge. That a person travels to the people of knowledge and learns from them, and then returns back home, or returns back to the homeland, and then starts to teach and spread that knowledge. So this is what happened. When Bukhari was returning back from his rihla, people found out that Imam al-Bukhari was returning. So they went out rather than waiting for him to come to the city to receive him. They went out of the city. And the Shaykh mentioned the measurement farsakh, which we will come to know. So they went out of the city, and meaning that it was quite a bit of a distance. And everybody from Bukhara left Bukhara, or left the city, and went out of the city to receive Bukhari, meaning nobody was left in the city that was somebody who was of importance or had a status. So they set their tents out of Bukhara, waiting to meet him and greet him and receive him. Farsakh. So what is farsakh? A farsakh is an old unit of distance measurement. It is often used in al-Fiqh al-Islami, particularly in discussions about travel-related rulings. So 1 farsakh equals 3 miles, according to classical Arabic Islamic usage. And Islamic mile, milu shar'i, is estimated to be around 1.8 to 2 kilometers, depending on some variances. So therefore, 1 farsakh is approximately, you can say, 3 miles or times 1.8 kilometers, which equals about 5.4 kilometers, or 3 miles plus 2 kilometers, about 6 kilometers. In the Sharia, the term farsakh appears frequently in the works of the fuqaha, especially when discussing the minimum travel distance that qualifies a person for legal concessions, rukhas, such as shortening the salawat, or combining the salawat, or making iftar of siyam. So in summary, 1 farsakh is about 5.5 to 6 kilometers and is a classical unit used in measuring distances, especially for determining the legal status of a traveler in Islamic rulings. In the olden days, people would go to receive a person returning to his village, or if he was departing. So if an important person or a beloved person was leaving the village to travel somewhere, or if he was returning back and news reached the inhabitants of the village, then you would see that those people would go out to receive him, or go out with the person who was departing to an X amount of distance till outside the village. And we see that this is what they did with Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala. Then the Shaykh rahimahullah, he said that this is what the people of Bukhara did. His own people, they came out, they set up tents a few kilometers outside Bukhara, and they waited for Bukhari. When he would return, they would greet him and meet him. A similar event took place with him in Nishapur. Shaykh Mubārakpūrī said, a similar event took place with him in Nishapur. Imam Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj said, when Muhammad ibn Ismail set foot into Nishapur, I had never seen a person of authority or a person of knowledge to whom the people of Nishapur did what they did for him. They waited for him 2 or 3 days' journey from the city. Muhammad ibn Mansur said there were 4,000 horsemen. As for those who are riding mules and donkeys and those on foot, then a number cannot be placed on them. So this is the second incident that the Shaykh mentioned, the incident of what happened when Imam al-Bukhari was going to Nishapur. And this was something that was witnessed by Imam al-Bukhari's senior student, known as Imam Muslim bin al-Hajjaj. So people went out of the city of Nishapur at a distance to receive him, meaning they wanted to receive him from this distance and enter Nishapur with him, rather than him entering Nishapur himself and then the people receiving him. So these people were in hundreds. To leave the city and go out shows that this is the utmost type of respect that can be shown to a person. Usually this is something which is done for the kings or the princes or great people of authority. But this respect or honor was also shown to Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala due to the Islamic knowledge that Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala possessed. Then Shaykh al-Salām Mubārakpūrī rahimahullah said, the Imam also went to Baghdad, the capital of Banu al-Abbas and the main hub for learning Islamic sciences. On one of his journeys, and his reputation and good mention had preceded him there. Thus the people of Baghdad gathered and prepared a special way to test his intelligence, the knowledge he had been gifted, and his remarkable memory. So Baghdad was the capital of the Muslim world at the time of Imam al-Bukhari. And it was known as the hub for learning Islamic sciences as well as other sciences. And Bukhari went there, he met with scholars there, he met with people like scholars like Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and he studied from him and others. But the people of Baghdad, they were informed or they were debriefed about the characteristic of Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala. So they knew about his immense knowledge and they wanted to test him on this. They wanted to see how intelligent Imam al-Bukhari was, how strong his memory really was. So they prepared a test for him. The incident of him being tested by the people of Baghdad to analyze how strong his memory was, this is a famous incident. Some people have argued that this incident did not really happen. It's not authentic with regards to testing the strong memory and intelligence of Imam al-Bukhari. But if we were to say or argue that, okay, that this incident is not established, that the people of Baghdad tested Imam al-Bukhari upon his arrival. And we will still say that if hypothetically Imam al-Bukhari was to have been tested, then we would have seen the same result without a shadow of doubt, as we see in the incident or in the story of the people of Baghdad testing Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala upon his arrival. Then the Shaykh rahimahullah mentioned, after mentioning Bukhara, after mentioning Baghdad, he mentioned Nishapur, he mentioned Basra. He said with regards to Basra, then it shook, and thousands of people came out when they learned of his approach. When they learned of his approach. Yusuf ibn Musa al-Marudhi, he said, I was in Basra in its Jami. Jami is a masjid where Salatul Jummah is performed. In the Muslim lands, we have many masajid in which 5 times salawat are performed. But these masajid do not perform Salatul Jummah. Salatul Jummah is usually performed in a masjid which is known as al-Jami or Jami, which also in that masjid 5 times salawat are also performed. But in addition to the 5 times salawat, the Salatul Jummah is also performed. And usually the size of this masjid is much greater than the size of the normal masajid. And this is what he says. So it's basically like the central mosque, as we would say. So he said, Al-Marudi, he said that I was in Basra in the central mosque when I heard someone calling out, people of knowledge, Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari has arrived. And then he said, so everyone went to greet him, myself along with them. And now he starts to describe Imam al-Bukhari. He says, we saw a young man without any white in his beard. This is to show that he's saying that Imam al-Bukhari was young. And then he performed salah behind a pillar. It shows that Bukhari took a sutra when he prayed. When he had finished, the people gathered around him. So Imam al-Bukhari finishes salah and people gather around him and ask him to form a gathering for them to dictate hadith to them. Imla. To dictate a hadith is known as imla. To which he agreed. Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah, at their request, he said, but I don't mind dictating hadith to you. So the one who called out then stood up for a second time in the Jami, in the central mosque of Basra, and said, people of knowledge, Muhammad ibn Ismail has arrived, and we asked him for a gathering for the dictation of a hadith, imla of a hadith. So he has agreed to do so tomorrow in such and such a place. As such, when the next day arrived, al-Muhaddithun, Wafad, the Fuqaha, and onlookers all gathered, until roughly so many thousands of souls gathered. Imam Abu Abdullah, meaning Imam al-Bukhari, then sat to dictate. And before he started, he said, people of Basra, I am a youth, and you've asked me to narrate a hadith to you. So I will narrate to you a hadith from the people of your land, which you will benefit from. Meaning that you do not possess them. So Imam al-Bukhari, when he accepted their request and said that, I will dictate and narrate hadith to you, Imam Bukhari was a very smart man. He said, as you are from Basra, let me narrate to you a hadith of Basra which you do not have. So Yusuf ibn Musa al-Marudi, then continued to say, the people were amazed by what he said. So Imam Bukhari, who is from Bukhara and who is not from Basra, has a hadith of Basra which the people of Basra do not have. Then he began to dictate, and he said, he started to dictate a hadith, and he said, حدثنا عبد الله ابن عثمان ابن جبل ابن أبي رواد العتكي في بلدكم قال حدثني أبي عن شعبة عن منصور وغيره عن سالم ابن أبي الجعد عن أنس بن مالك أن أعرابيا جاء إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله الرجل يحب القوم الحديث. So we say that Abdullah ibn Uthman ibn Jamala ibn Abi Rawad al-Ataki from your land, meaning from Basra, said that his father narrated to him on the authority of Shu'bah, who narrated on the authority of Mansur, and others who narrated on the authority of Salim ibn Abil Ja'd, who narrated on the authority of Anas ibn Malik, that a Bedouin came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, a man may love people to the end of the hadith. Then he said, you do not possess this from Mansur, meaning this chain of transmission that he mentioned from Shu'bah from Mansur. He said, you don't have this from Mansur. Rather, you only possess it from other than him, meaning that you only have it from other than Mansur, but I'm narrating it to you from Mansur. Yusuf ibn Musa went on to say that he proceeded to dictate the entire session in this manner, saying after every hadith, so and so narrated this hadith to you as such, as for from the riwayah of so and so, meaning the one he is narrating, then you do not possess it. So every time he brought a narration from a route of transmission from Ahlul Basra for the people of Basra, which the people of Basra did not have. So as we can see, that even that the ocean of knowledge of Imam al-Bukhari, he narrated hadith to the people of Basra, translated by the people of Basra themselves, which the people of Basra themselves did not possess. This was meaning of his statement, so I will narrate to you a hadith from the people of your land, which you will benefit from, meaning that you do not possess them. And the Shaykh Rahimahullah, he said, this Basra is a city which was built by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu during his khilaf. It was a magnificent city, well known for the presence of knowledge and the mass dispersion of the Sunnah between its people. So Basra was built by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. And Basra and Kufa were two cities which were considered centers for learning al-Ulum al-Shari'ah, Islamic sciences. So although Basra and Kufa were two famous cities known for studying and seeking knowledge, but the Shaykh here makes an observation where he says, however, it would be something of a bold statement to say that they were on par with Mecca and Medina. Although they may have been centers of learning Islam, but they were not par or equal to the knowledge and to the people of knowledge that could be found in Mecca and Medina. It is not possible that they could be as such, despite the fact that they were at the pinnacle of knowledge and understanding once upon a time. So there was a time at the pinnacle of knowledge and understanding the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger could be found in Basra and Kufa. So the Shaykh made this distinction and made it clear that although Basra and Kufa had great scholars of the Sunnah, they were not on par with Mecca and Medina. It was not possible to compare them to Mecca and Medina. And then the Shaykh, he mentioned all these carriers of hadith. We find the Hamil hadith as Masruq ibn al-Ajda, al-Hasan al-Basri, Qatada, Shu'bah ibn al-Hajjaj, Muhammad ibn al-Sirin, and others. He says all these were giants, Imams of Ahlul Hadith, and they were all among the residents of Basra, or those who settled there. But still Mecca and Medina still had the upper hand and still had also many, many more great scholars than the people of Basra and Kufa. As we know that the people in Kufa, they were people of Rai, Ahlul Rai, the people of opinions, and who were, you can say, head to head with Ahlul Hadith. Now, then we move on where the Shaykh then finishes that, and then he talks about the dhaka, the aql, and the tadbir, contemplation of Imam al-Bukhari. So his intelligence, understanding, and contemplation. As for his views, contemplation, intellect, intuition, memory, presence of mind and intelligence, then these are among the characteristics Imam al-Bukhari possessed, which friends and foes alike acknowledged. So all these great qualities would all be found in Imam al-Bukhari at the level of perfection. That we can find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him to a level which was something, if found within a human being, would be praised. That's why we find that Qutaybah ibn Sa'id, another great Imam, he used to say about himself, he said, جالست الفقهاء والزهاد والعباد فما رأيت منذ عقلت مثل محمد بن إسماعيل وهو في زمانه كأمر في الصحابة. He said, I sat with all the fuqaha, all the jurists, all the zuhad, the ascetics, and ubbad, devout worshippers. And as much as I can remember, but I have not seen anyone like Muhammad ibn Ismail. There was nobody that could be compared to Muhammad ibn Ismail in terms of ibadah or zuhd. And then he made this comparison. And this is, I think, is the best way. I think this statement of Qutaybah ibn Sa'id should be written with gold ink. That Imam al-Bukhari, he was in his time as Umar was to the Sahaba in his status. So this is how we can describe Imam al-Bukhari. That just as Umar was amongst the Sahaba, the status of Umar amongst the Sahaba, this is how Bukhari was in his time amongst people. So Qutaybah ibn Sa'id, he mentions zuhd. So az-zuhd linguistically means to abstain from or turn away from something due to lack of desire. This is what zuhd means in the Arabic language. Amma al-istilah shar'i, zuhd is described as tarku ma la yanfa'u fil akhirah, التقليل من التعلق بالدنيا طلبا لما عند الله. To basically renounce what does not benefit in the hereafter and to reduce attachment to worldly matters in pursuit of what is with Allah. So this is what zuhd means, and we find that Imam al-Bukhari was a zahid. This is why we find that Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah, he said, الزاهد هو الذي إذا أنعم الله عليه شكر فإذا ابتلي صبر وإذا ظلم غفر. The ascetic or the zahid is the one, when Allah blesses him, he's thankful to him. And that when he is tested, he is patient. And when he is wronged or oppressed, he forgives. This is what a zahid is. And we find like the likes of Sufyan al-Thawri and Ibn Qayyim and al-Hasan al-Basri, they were all from the zuhad, and they all discussed the effect of zuhd. So some people think that being a zahid means that you give up food and you give up living in a good house and you live like a tramp. This is the definition of a zahid. To turn away from the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not the understanding of a zuhd, or this is not a true zahid as understood by the Sahaba and the students of the Sahaba and those who came after them. So true zuhd means minimal attachment to the worldly life, using blessings in obedience to Allah, avoiding what does not benefit in the hereafter, and desiring the eternal reward with Allah. Sum everything up. They say that Imam Bukhari was from the Zuhad. His strong, then Shaykh al-Salām, rahimahullah, he said his strong memory was used as an example, such that every time Imam al-Bukhari was mentioned, this trait among all of his other traits were mentioned with him. So this is to show that there was something that was always mentioned about Imam al-Bukhari, and that was his strong memory. Strong memory was used like a benchmark, like an example, or was always mentioned when he was being described. Imam al-Dhahabi wrote an extremely concise biography of him in Tadhkiratul Huffaz. We wish that somebody was to translate this into the English language for the benefit of the brothers and sisters who cannot read Arabic. So when he did write what he wrote about Imam al-Bukhari, Shaykh al-Salām rahimahullah said that he did not fail to say, meaning although he wrote, he still had to include this in his biography. He said, وَكَانَ رَأْسًا فِي الذَّكَاءِ رَأْسًا فِي الْعِلْمِ وَرَأْسًا فِي الْوَرْعِ وَالْإِبَانِ. He was a leading figure in intelligence, a leading figure in knowledge, and a leading figure in wara and ibadah, worship. Again, we've come through this term, al-wara. So what does wara mean? Definition of al-wara. So al-wara in the Arabic language is huwa al-kaffu wal-imtina'. It means to refrain or hold back from something. In al-istilah al-shar'i, al-wara'u هو ترك ما قد يفضي إلى الحرام وتحرز من الشبهات خوفا من الوقوع في المعصية. To refrain from what may lead to the unlawful or that which is haram, and to avoid doubtful matters out of fear of falling into sin. So this is what al-wara' is. And Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, he had al-wara' within him. Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah, when he described wara', he said al-wara' tarku ma yuribuka ila ma la yuribuk. Wara' is to leave what causes you doubt for what does not cause you doubt. You need to leave everything that is far doubtful until you indulge yourself with that which is not doubtful. So in summary, wara' is a higher level than zuhd, because zuhd is to leave what is not beneficial, while wara' is to leave what may be harmful. And also al-wara', it reflects a servant's khawf, fear of Allah, and concern for the safety of his or her religion, of her deen. And al-wara' is the fence of taqwa. It is the siyaj al-taqwa. And it is a sign, darajatun aliyah min al-iman, a high sign which is high, or high sign of iman. Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah included Imam al-Bukhari with the hufaz of hadith, acknowledging that he had memorized thousands of hadith. So additionally, then the Shaykh rahimahullah, he said, additionally, something historians generally do in books of biographies or rijal, when they mention the ulama, is that among the traits they mention their quick understanding, powerful capabilities in memorization, their self-sufficiency, humility, zuhd, wara, and other traits. However, the majority of the time they do not mention their intellect, opinion making, insight, and contemplation, as though they are qualities of the people of the dunya, and they do not belong to anyone besides them. So this is what the Shaykh rahimahullah said. Shaykh is saying, although this is the norm of many scholars not to mention such things, but Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah was an exception to the norm. And these qualities of his, which you can say somebody could argue are some qualities related to the dunya, or rigidly related to the deen, are not the dunya. Meaning Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah connected these qualities when it came to insight, came to contemplation, and so forth. So this is what, and then the Shaykh said, this is what al-Āllāmah Ibn Khaldun said when he said, among mankind, the ulama are the furthest from politics and its different forms. So this is a statement of al-Āllāmah Ibn Khaldun, and if it is not understood in its correct context, once again, could easily be misunderstood. So what is Ibn Khaldun trying to say? Ibn Khaldun, who was the renowned historian and sociologist, is highlighting a reality he observed in society. He said that Islamic scholars, ulama, are generally the most distant from political involvement and its various forms, such as governance, power struggles, political maneuvering, and worldly leadership. Meaning that the true Islamic scholars have no desire, no interest of gaining any of the things that are mentioned. But they are not people who are hungry for power or leadership, or people who want position. So that's why you find that the ulama, when he said that they are free from politics and its different forms. So why would scholars be distant from politics, from siyasa? There's a few reasons that we can understand why Ibn Khaldun made that statement. Number one, due to work. Scholars often fear falling into doubtful or corrupt manners, and politics is frequently associated with compromise, injustice, and moral ambiguity. Number two, preserving independence of judgment. Being tied to rulers or political parties can influence a scholar's rulings of credibility. Distance protects scholarly integrity. As we saw with Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala, and the narrations that we read about that, he feared that if he went to the palaces of the leaders, he may be tried. So out of wara, now we understand that Bukhari protected himself out of wara to go to the palaces of the rulers and the governors. Number three, focus on the hereafter. Many sincere scholars view politics as a distraction from their true mission, preserving and teaching the deen, guiding people to the straight path, and seeking Allah's pleasure. They believe that if they got themselves involved in such discussions, then that would detour their route, and they don't want to do that. And the fourth we can say is that avoiding corruption and moral decline. Historically, political power has often corrupted even well-meaning people. Scholars recognize this and choose to remain outside of it. So does this mean that scholars should avoid all political matters? Not necessarily. Ibn Khaldun is describing a general trend, not prescribing an absolute rule. We know that many scholars did engage in politics when necessary for justice, reform, or advising rulers, but with caution and principle. So the statement means that true scholars are not seekers of power, and they only involve themselves when compelled by duty and not out of ambition or hunger for power. So Ibn Khaldun's statement reflects the observation that true Islamic scholars are typically not involved in politics, not because politics is inherently forbidden, but because of dangers it possesses to sincerity, integrity, and religious focus. The distance is a sign of their taqwa, piety, hikmah, wisdom, and understanding of the risks of worldly ambitions. Now, so this is what we understand from the statement of Ibn Khaldun. And then the Shaykh, rahimahullah ta'ala, did we understand the statement of Ibn Khaldun? If somebody was to just pull out the statement of Ibn Khaldun without understanding the intent and the context of Ibn Khaldun, then that would be very, very dangerous. because we have scholars who are involved in politics and we have scholars who are not involved in politics due to the wara and the zuhd that they have. And then we have certain scholars who are, you can say, in between. Sometimes they may get involved in certain things related to politics and some may not get involved at all. One last thing that I can comment on what Ibn Khaldun and everybody says, that the statement of Shaykh Abdus-Salam Mubārakpūrī shows that to enter into politics differs from scholars and region and time. At times the scholars enter and at time they abstain. And an example of this is in our times, we as students of knowledge do not understand the politics of many of our Muslim leaders or rulers. We do not have the knowledge or deep insight. So we as people of the West, we don't have deep insight. We don't know the siyasa of a country. Yet we want to be the policy makers and make comments and criticize and do all sorts of things. So we're residing in Dar al-Kufr, in the land of Kufr. We want to comment and say what is happening in Saudi Arabia, or what is happening in Qatar, or what is happening in Egypt, or what is happening in Yemen. This is wrong, and this is not right, and this is what should be happening. So we find this a lot amongst many. We find that many of the ulama, they abstained from engaging into politics due to wara and zuhd. And today the shabab want to engage in politics, but they don't have the knowledge to do so. And most of the people who call to these rebellions, and most of these people who incite these type of, you can say, they interpret it as freedom of speech, or they interpret it as speaking the truth and not fearing and not being puppets. And all these people, you can say, are really all hungry for power. You know, it is at the end of the day, as we saw from the statement of Ibn Khaldun, worldly ambitions, meaning worldly status and ambitions. They've never lived in the Muslim lands. Many of these youth have never lived in the Muslim lands. They've never spent time in the Muslim. Yet they want to make comments and they're giving suggestions. So in our time, we find that many scholars are involved in siyasa of the country. And for example, we have the scholars such as the likes of Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan, the Mufti of Saudi Arabia, Mufti Abdul Aziz al-Shaykh, Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh, and others. So we as students of knowledge, we should not get involved in such matters. And if there is an issue for us that needs to be addressed, that needs to be spoken about, whether it's a contemporary issue, then refer it back to the senior scholars who sit with the rulers to advise them and who have knowledge of siyasa, of the country. Me and you, Allah has not compelled us, nor has it made it obligatory upon us to speak about these issues. And hence, why get involved? And the statement of Ibn Khaldun reflects that to abstain from engaging in such matters, if the scholars who have the knowledge of Islam, who have the answers to which a ruler may need, he may excuse himself for personal reasons. No doubt that there are always scholars who are always with the rulers advising them. Last week we discussed this, or the week before, how Imam al-Bukhari abstained from participating and engaging or attending the gatherings of the rulers, from the context that what he saw. So this is how it should be. And then the Shaykh rahimahullah, he said that there is no doubt that Imam al-Muhaddithin, Imam al-Bukhari, stands out from the ulama of every sect with regards to this quality. So Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, he stands out. Why? Why does Imam al-Bukhari did stand out? Because he had knowledge of the deen as well as the dunya. So he had knowledge of the dunya along with the hidden secrets of the Sharia. The hidden secrets of the Sharia here means the intricate issues, the difficult issues, the issues which are hidden normally from the general masses and even many of the people of knowledge. But for Imam al-Bukhari, they were manifested and they were transparent, despite being as far as one could possibly be from rulers and governors. And his dislike for being close to them, he deducted the most glorious and precise set of rules and systems pertaining to governance from ahadith and athar. So this is an amazing statement of Shaykh al-Salām. Previously we have known why al-Bukhari preferred to stay away from the rulers. And we also know that Imam al-Bukhari was well versed in the affairs of the dunya, and that he could deduce all the rulings needed from the hadith of Prophet ﷺ. Although Bukhari excused himself, and this is a quality which we need to understand, which stands out in Bukhari. He preferred to stay away from the rulers. He never visited the rulers. He never sat with the rulers. He never got involved with the siyasa. But he deducted and he knew the rulings of governance from the ahadith and asar of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Meaning that he was fully updated with what was going on and he had knowledge of these issues, although he never directly got involved. And this is something which you won't find in anybody. I can challenge you to find me somebody of such caliber. Now, so furthermore, when we look at the issues of the dunya, the Shaykh says when we analytically read the chapters in Sahih al-Bukhari on the topic of mu'amalat, dealings with people and business interactions and other issues. In fact, even in the book of biographies, which Bukhari has, we will find that the reality in which there is no doubt is that all of the minute matters and rules pertaining to the Sharia, which he extracted and deduced from Sahih Ahadith, are the soul of judiciality and the essence of governance and rulership. And there is absolutely no dispute that this is part of the understanding of which Allah gave Imam al-Bukhari a plentiful share. So this is the miracle of Imam al-Bukhari. This is the miracle. So a scholar is a scholar who has knowledge of rulings related to the dunya, like business transactions, contemporary issues, issues related to governance, rulership. But one point that we need to understand here is that the manhaj of Imam al-Bukhari, or the fiqh of Imam al-Bukhari, was to extract and infer or deduce such issues or rulings of these judicial issues from the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is what is the way of the Ahlul Hadith. And this is the madhab of the Ahlul Hadith. And this was the madhab of Imam al-Bukhari. We ask Allah to grant it to us also, to be as such that Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah extracted all his issues from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. نعم بارك الله فيكم وجزاكم. صلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.